This meeting is being recorded.
Welcome, everyone. Dr. Anthony Criniti IV here, also known as Dr. Finance, here on the Dr. Finance Live podcast. We got a very special guest today. We got George Martorano, incredible individual. Actually, he's survived some of the most difficult, challenging situations. 32 years in prison, folks. He was sentenced to life of prison. 32 years. He came out, and he's changing the youth, trying to help many people out to find better purpose and meaning in life. So I want to give an incredible welcome to George Martorano. Welcome, George. How are you, sir?
Hey, good morning, Tony. Pleasure to be here.
Nice honor to have you here. Now, George is actually the first guest from my area in Philadelphia. So it's incredible to have George here. So George, the way we start out on this podcast, usually we do like a 30-second snapshot of the person's profile. Instead of me reading a whole thing, it's better if you would say it. And then we're going to get into your story, because George has an incredible story. We don't want to miss any of it. So you want to just start with the snapshot, maybe 30 seconds, and then we'll get into your story. Thank you, George.
Well, again, my name is George Martorano. I did 32 plus years in prison, nonviolent first offender, and I got worse than life. I got life, no parole, which means you come home in a body bag. I'm the most appealed federal prisoner to date, 32 appeals, 32 years. So it's an interesting story. I hope we can make people understand it.
Absolutely. Thank you, George. Appreciate that. So George, just to get started, let's go back to, there's a lot of different dynamics to George's story. So I think, George, to get started, we're probably best to start chronologically, start from childhood. So you have a Philadelphia accent just like me, because you come from South Philadelphia. That's incredible. So you want to start with your childhood, maybe just work back to the old neighborhood when you're growing up?
Well, I travel a lot, but fortunate today I'm in my home in a historical neighborhood. We owned this home since 1952. It's in a very, at that time, it just was a regular Italian neighborhood. Now it's pretty much sought after neighborhood in Philadelphia. And my street that I live on, the block that I live on, actually had a nickname back in the 30s and 40s. It was called Gunman's Row, where businessmen would come and hire these gunmen either to collect debt or worse. And it was a street where several, coffee houses, speakeasy were, and very ethnic. And my uncle actually used to be one of the runners for one of the gangsters on the block. Runner meant when the gangster would have to go do what he had to do, his guns would be hid around the neighborhood somewhere, probably in a tenement house, somewhere in the back bathroom, and my uncle would run and get the guns. And so it's very characteristic, this neighborhood. They have still have some famous stories to be told, gangsters. I wrote a book on one of them, Tony Stinger. So it's just a great, colorful neighborhood.
Thank you, George. So let's start with like your first 10 years. I've heard you tell me one story before. You were 2 years old, and your your life kind of took a turn at that. Just from that point, you were involved with.
Well, back then in an ethnic neighborhood, your parents, they were usually married and raising children time they're 17, 18 years old. That was common. And my mother was a young mother, and there was a gangster named Benny. His name was Benny de Simone. He was very, very vicious gangster. And he just said he liked kids. He liked me, and he used to come and get me from my mother and take me up the street to the ice cream place. And he used to get a kick out of buying me this cone ice cream, and I'd be licking it and getting all over me. And my father didn't like it. My mother said, "What am I going to do?" My mother actually used to be very nervous when she handed me over. He didn't do it every day, but he would do it a couple of times a month. And one day he come and got me, and then we were up the corner, and the car pulls up real quick. Two guys jump out, and one guy driving, two guys jump out, and they blast him. They killed him. I was right there, and then of course my mother heard the shots, and she ran out of the house to retrieve me, and then when the cops came around, especially the homicide detectives, the first thing they wanted to know who the stroller was there, because I was in the stroller. What the stroller, what family did the stroller belong to? What child? Because they know somebody had to say something. And I remember I told me the story when I got older. They had to sneak me out of town. They actually they snuck me around the other street to my other grandmother, and then the heat was still on, and then they had to move me all the way from Philadelphia to Wildwood. So I was 2 years old on the lam.
That's crazy.
That's not the second time. The first time it happened, rather.
Wow.
So it was a very something neighborhood. And my father was just a young guy trying to survive. You know, he was 19 years old, and this big incident happened. And that's this. They says my father's name's Long John. I have a bottle over here that says Long John on it. Anyway, that's how he got his bones, because he didn't go after them to kill them. He was pretty tough with his hands. So he tracked each one of them down and gave them real bad beatings and actually put them in the hospital. And that's how he started getting his reputation, Long John, because it wasn't right. You don't gun a guy down in front of a child, because I could have got hit. But that's just part. It's like many stories in this neighborhood. Many stories.
So George, what was it like growing up in your, like, let's say your first 10 years? What was it like in South Philadelphia?
The first 10 years, well, as a child, my father went to prison at 4 years old, and my mother, we moved down to the South Jersey Shore because, you know, she wanted to be near her mother. I had three sisters. So he took the children down there, and then my father didn't come home till I was 10, 6 years later. So, and when he came home, he was on probation. So we stood down the shore another, I think, 4 more years. So I was my preteen time. I was raised in the South Jersey Shore, and then we moved back to the city after he was off of probation. So I was raised basically preteen down the South Jersey Shore, a teen into a young man in Philadelphia.
I didn't know that, George. So you were born in South Philly, and then you went down the shore for about 10 years, and then
Yeah, my mother her mother lived down the shore. They had a business. They had an Italian grocery deli and stores. So she wanted to be there. She thought it'd be better atmosphere for us, because my father got 10 years. Getting a 10-year sentence back in those days was very, very rare. You know, you went away for a year or two. So it was a stiff sentence. So I guess the embarrassment, my mother, she didn't want us children being subject to any back talk and snickers and stuff like that. So we went to live in the South Jersey Shore, which would be Wildwood, and we still have family and business there.
Oh, you were in Wildwood?
Yeah.
Wow, I didn't know that. So
yeah.
How was that like growing up over there, going to the beach all the time?
Well, you worked, you know, we had family businesses. We worked, or always worked. I never remember not working, always after school. And then when my father came home, he was on probation, and he opened a few small businesses. And one of them was, I thought it would be great until used to work an awful lot. I used to work my butt off. He opened up a riding academy, you know, with horses and ponies, which takes a lot of work. So, and then we stood down there, and then when he was off the paper, I never forget. We went out. He took us to dinner, and we were going to come back to Philadelphia, and we went to the movies. We went to dinner, and then while we were at the movies, everything burned down. Businesses, the house, everything burnt down. So that's how we exited.
That's so funny. All right, so you're back in Philly, and you've always been a hard worker, like you said. I mean, you had a lot of different jobs growing up, right? Like a lot of entrepreneurship jobs, or just jobs as.
Yeah, I always worked. Always worked. Always was worked. I always had some kind of scheme going on. Something.
So I think it's probably best to step back in this story, because some people may be lost at this point. And to really understand you, George, we have to understand a little bit about your dad and your godfather as well. So you want to tell us a little about who Raymond Long John Martorano is, then we'll come back to your teenage years.
Well, he's he was very well, he was a street man, he was a businessman, he was a gangster, he was a lot of things rolled into one. To me, he was a very good family man. His grandchildren loved him till they love him till today. But he was a guy. Matter of fact, though, one of my businesses, it's called the Hip Hemp Cafe, cannabis industry, and we have a well there that was used by bootleggers. It's a historic well. It was made during the Civil War, and my dad, to support the family, he actually worked for the bootleggers, running pints of booze around until one of the bootleggers gets killed, I believe, and then my father took over the bootlegging until he went to prison. So, just a great, unbelievable stories, great concepts, stuff, very David Runyon, very characteristic. But Raymond Long John has been actually in the center of the underworld in Philadelphia, I would say, for over 50 years. He's been in the newspapers and magazines numerous times. He was very well-dressed man, very handsome man, very business oriented. And, but like I said, you come from nothing, so he had to do something. Which he wasn't pleased with me, because I had a full scholarship to a certain university, and I didn't take advantage of it. I was drawn more to the streets, which he didn't like. So, but Raymond Long John, he was just something else.
So your dad, he wound up doing time for, he became a made man, I guess.
Yeah, he was made. Yeah.
Yeah. So now let's pivot to, so Angelo Bruno, we're only going to talk about this a little bit, then we'll get back to your story, George. So Angelo Bruno was your godfather, and just a little bit of history of Philadelphia, folks. So Angelo was the main guy in the mob for, I believe, until 1980, until his assassination. And then the history of Philadelphia really has changed dramatically from that moment. George, you want to talk about Angelo and about that crucial moment?
Well, yeah, Angelo became the boss in the late 50s. He got killed in 1980. He was my godfather's godfather to a lot of our family. He was just a great man. He taught me a lot, but he was Angelo Bruno. He was when you're raised with the mob life, you don't look at it as a mob life. It was a family life, and naturally, you're different. I mean, there's no, you cannot say that you're different. You live by certain rules, but you raise your family by the right rules. That's the most important thing, especially the women. And but Angelo was a great teacher. I drove him for a while as his driver, driving him to New York, I was only a teenager, meeting all the power. People don't know the power that the mob families had in this country. They basically controlled everything, especially the unions. So it was a great time to be around that kind of power. And I say a sentence now. I says back then it made sense, and then we start losing the sense in the 80s. Oh,
Yeah, absolutely. So, and the old school way of, you know, Angelo Bruno's way of doing, he was a businessman though, right? Mostly a businessman.
business always was first, never violent. Violence last. He was a
Yeah.
businessman, very well liked. I mean, the people in New York, the commission wouldn't do anything, any serious decision without his advice. He was just a great man, and I was business with him for years, vending business, and I wasn't on the streets at all back then until he got killed. He got killed in 1980, and then I went to the streets for a while with the cannabis industry, which we'll talk about. But he's just unbelievable. He organized all the vending from in the state of New Jersey and Eastern Pennsylvania, all the way down to Baltimore. I mean, he just was a great. He had a great view, and he knew how to treat people the way they should be treated to get the best yield. You know, you want to get the best yield in business, you need people to bring you the yield, and he was an expert with that. In other words, anybody got involved with Ann's either loved them, and very few disliked them.
Thank you, George. All right, George. So we'll get back to your story now. So that builds the foundation, folks. So George, what was a hardworking person, he just got himself wrapped up into a little bit of trouble for a brief period in his life, which changed his whole life. And so, George, you want to tell that story, your teenage years, and where that went from there?
Well, teenage years, I was in the neighborhood, and matter of fact, it's funny. Our street gang used to be at 7th and Catherine, not too far from where this interview is being doing. And there's a very famous art school of Fletcher's Art School. It's been there for 140 years. And we used to, they had big steps, and we would hang there growing up. And we get a chance, we sneak in the side door back, because they would have the classes with the naked girls. We were young guys. And anyway, today, incidentally, we had a meeting there just the other day. They're going to do a film, one of my films, which hopefully we'll talk about here. One of my award-winning films. We're going to be showing that there in probably June. So that's going to be enjoyable to me, because it's a place where there's a lot of history. So and then, like I said, I went to school. I wasn't too much with sports, because I always worked after school with the vending company, and on the weekend I was 16 years old, and I had my own pool hall. So you worked, and then on the weekend, you had money in your pocket. That was the most important thing. I didn't wait till anybody gave me money. I went and worked, and even when I was younger than that, I used to have a pony ring every summer. I used to buy 5, 6 ponies, and I trained guys to go around the city, give pony rides, and we did okay. They were okay. I was just a kid. So so you worked, and then Hans was the boss. The city was going very well, and then I started getting involved all the businesses like restaurants, stuff like that, and then never was in trouble. Never even had a parking ticket. And then fast forward, I don't know how they gave me life, no parole, a nonviolent first offender. So anyway, I worked, and we had all the vending actually from our company, our personal family company. We had the vending all the way from Ocean City, New Jersey to Cape May, offshore and onshore. Offshore meant all the campgrounds. So I used to work hard. And then as you get older, the more businesses work more harder. The money was okay. It wasn't great, but it was okay. And then we had Atlantic City, I think, was the demise. Atlantic City Actually, I was sent to Vegas to learn. Atlantic City came up for a vote to legalize gambling in 1970, and it was shot down, and then they had to wait another 5 years to vote again, but they moved it, I think, to 3 years. 73 it passed, and then right away they started construction. So I was sent to Las Vegas to actually by my godfather. My father learned the industry. I was only 19. And that was the time, the era when all that was going on with a very famous movie, award-winning movie in this country, Casino. So I was there when all that was going on. The actor Joe Pesci paid Tony. His name was Tony the Ant out of Chicago. To me, he was a nice guy. He had a restaurant. I was only a young guy when I come in there, with a little date or something. He treated me wonderful. But that was the day. That was the era when the mob ran Vegas, and it was way different, way different than it is today.
George, when did
So,
you start working at the vending machine business?
Christ almighty, since I was a kid. When we moved back to the city, my father had, a year before we moved back to the city, he already had started the vending business here. So when I came back, I think I was 14, I right to work.
Wow.
The vending company. So we moved to wind up a small location to a bigger location to a much bigger location. And we were in business for over 30 years. And, like I said, you worked.
That was your main job throughout your,
Well, like I
teenage
said, we
years.
had restaurants and stuff like that. There was always work. There was always work. There was always work. There was always a paycheck. So, and then, like I said, when, God forbid the day Ans got killed, but he did get killed. And then we get into that story a little bit later, but that's when I went to the streets.
All right. And you said you were supposed to go to a university. So you want to talk about high school and that
Well,
point?
I graduated high school. As a private school in Center City, Lincoln Prep, until I really liked that school to a friend of mine, crazy kid from a wealthy family right in that neighborhood, 20th and Walnut. He sets a fire in a fuse box in the basement of this very historical, prestigious school and burns the whole school down. So it just so happens that it was at the end of the season, and I already had graduated, so to speak. And then I supposed to go to this university, which I don't want to mention. And I didn't go. I just went there. Instead of doing the right thing, on campus, I did all the wrong things, selling marijuana.
Yeah. So when did you start going into a different path, leaving the 9 to 5?
I always dabbled, even though my godfather was alive. I always dabbled. And I've been smoking weed since I'm a kid. I still smoke it. I believe in it. Naturally, when I was in prison 32 years, I didn't do any damn thing because that's a whole another saga of my life, my prison accomplishments, which I'm very proud of. And so I never was making a lot of money. I was just making a little bit of money, and I worked. So that was what a teen did. That was what a young guy did back then. I stood away from serious drugs. I stood away from them. I didn't use them or sell them. But I always dabbled with marijuana. I liked marijuana. I didn't like drinking it as a teen. I just didn't feel right. I rather, when I wanted to get a buzz, I usually smoked rather than drink beer.
So what was the next steps after high school? What'd you do after that?
It worked. That's about it. You worked. I worked in the city. I worked in the suburbs. I worked down the shore. Philadelphia was a place to be back then. Right now we have a lot of problems with violence. The only really violence the city ever seen in the late 70s, whereas the 80s was probably the mob violence more so than anything. But he just, I enjoyed my hobby was horseback riding. So that was always a big part of my life up to prison. Any chance I got, I always owned a horse or two and went and ride in Pennsylvania or Jersey. Yeah, I was a runner. I'm still a runner. I've been a runner since I'm 17. I think that's a very positive thing that added to my coming home from prison and not in bad health. So I just like running. I love swimming. I love the shore in all seasons. I love the shore. I love the bay area, the ocean. So till today, matter of fact, I just got back last week. Any chance I get down to the shore and just breathe the air, run along the beach. As soon as the weather breaks, I swim. I swim in the bay. I swim in the ocean. And the little things. It's always back to the little things, no matter how much money I made and who I thought I was. And then I went to jail. Basically, my life was over. I'm back to when I was a kid again. I mean, when I knew when I was a kid and they had to make me go do something to work, what was on my mind was, oh, as soon as I get done, I'm going to go swimming and time. Now I'm back to the same way as a kid. Only thing, and you know me, Tone. We're fortunate enough we got to know each other a little bit, and you know me. As long as I can get that little pleasure in that running or that swimming, so I'm back to where I was when I was a kid.
So George, let's get to your story of how you actually got indicted and went away right before then. So what were you doing that please disclose only what you want to, tell the story of.
Well, I'm not. My life's an open book, so I mean, well, Angelo gets assassinated, my godfather, and a lot of trouble going on. A lot of people were killed, and I was approached sometime later. I was approached by two guys who are pretty successful in the marijuana industry, and they wanted they needed someone to take the ropes. So they figured they had a meeting with me, and they said, you're the perfect choice because the way I was raised, they figured, I would never rat on them, which I didn't. And overnight I used to small amounts of marijuana, and overnight I had a lot of, an awful lot. And I started the marijuana industry in Philly and South Jersey. And again, the one thing I was adamant, whatever we did, I make sure there was no violence. No violence. If a guy owed me money, I just say, forget it. Just keep away. And that paid off down the road, not being nonviolent in a crime. Crazy as it sounds, but if anybody knows federal court like I do, it's very important that you don't hurt people.
How was your business as an entrepreneur in the marijuana business back then? Pretty successful before you got indicted?
Yeah, pretty good. You do good, you spend it, you gamble it, you lend it out to other crazy schemes that didn't work out, one step forward, two steps back, but most important thing is I took care of the family, my family. That was the most important thing.
So fast forward. So you worked most of your life. You only got involved the way you described it.
I worked in prison. For 32 years. I worked in prison.
Yeah, but before you got there, you only went off track for like 4 years. So you paid for
three. My indictment, 3 years. Yes.
Wow. So 3 years of your life, you will go off track and you wind up doing a lifetime sentence with no parole because of those 3 years.
Yeah, well, it was more than that. It was all conspiracy, backroom, double cross. My lawyer was working with the FBI behind my back, and the judge, I don't know, the judge, they said he was mentally unstable, but you can't. No one. There's plenty of legal avenues that you can get rid of a judge when they're not stable, but they let this judge continue. This judge Hannon continue for years. He just was. If we could, next time we do something, or maybe we can do some a trailer on my film, the Fresh Film Festival. We won the festival of my film called Life of No Parole, the George Martorano story, and that shows a lot. That shows a lot about, especially with the courts, because we had a lot of important people talk on that film, lawyers, prosecutors, things like that. And when you do documentaries, incidentally, Colin, one thing you'll be proud what you took your show. You took your show to extraordinary heights. You realize that, the worst thing you can do is tell falsehoods. It's the worst you can do in any type of interview, and which I pride myself that I don't. I don't know about these other informants. They got these big shows, and how do you trust an informant? I don't want to mention their names, but they're ex-mom guys. And I think, credibility is very important. And the documentary organization that I went with, they were adamant about that. They made sure they checked everything out. So I'm proud of that I came out, not going in there just, gaming. I don't want to do that.
Thank you, George. All right, George. So I guess we'll move into, you got arrested. What was that day like, and what led to that event?
Well, I guess I was under surveillance and things like that, and then you get indicted. I got indicted. I was arrested in September 19th, 1983. It was in Florida, and that was a strange situation because I actually was out of the country. I wasn't coming back because I'm not stupid. I had a few bucks back then, and I figured something's coming to come down. So let me get a chance to prepare myself. I figured the best way to do it, best way to negotiate would be out of the country. I figured, yeah, I'm going to go to jail, but sometimes it pays to be the tortoise with the whole thing. Be patient. So there was a situation, like I said, fortunately, Tone, in your lifetime, you'll be able to read my novel, see the movie when we're trying to do now. I was out of the country. I'm in Costa Rica, and I get a call there. There was some real bad situation ready to go down in Miami over some weed, and these two gangs were going to start killing each other. And I really didn't want to get involved with it. They said, you're the only one that can come and straighten it out, and blah, 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 blah. So they convinced me. Actually, they offered me a nice gift if I would come in and straighten it out. They sent a plane for me, private plane. And the next thing I know, back in Miami, I told the plane, stay on the tarmac. I told the pilot to keep the fee going. In other words, you have to keep paying if you're going to be ready to take off. I said, just keep it ready to go. And I went and I straightened it all out. And like I said, it was two gangs ready to start killing each other. So I straightened it all out, no violence. And I made the mistake of they wanted to celebrate. They said, well, let's take you to dinner and blah, blah, blah. So I'm calling the airport. I'm saying, just sit tight, sit tight. And to make a long story short, we partied a little too much. And the next morning, I'm ready to go. I'm up early, had a small breakfast, ready to go to the private airport. And crazy thing happens. I had just tipped all the young people working there. Little girl, Floridian beach girl. I tipped all of them, and I forgot I didn't tip this one little hostess. So I go back and I tip her, and the phone rings, and it was a very influential businessman from one of the big hotels in Florida. And I didn't know at the time that he was working with the FBI to try to find me. And I used to have people drop some money off at his office when I was out of town, and he gets me on the phone. Hey, where you been? And blah, blah, blah. He said, I got some money here. So I was a short ride from where he was talking to me from, but I should have caught on because he didn't tell me to come to his office. He told me to go to this hotel, another big plush hotel across the street. I should have caught on because she never said anything about that. So anyway, I go there. I figure, let me grab this cash. I'm going to be going. I'll probably be needing it. So I go there, and it was the pool. And incidentally, I didn't know it at the time, of course, but every pool, the girls in the pool with bikinis were agents. They had guns in plastic bags. The bartender was an agent, the pool boy, the lifeguard, everybody. Oh, there must have been 20 agents back there. And the guy that I was supposed to meet set me up. And I knew he set me up, the son of a bitch. Because as soon as I walked up, he's sitting at the bar by himself and he's got his jacket hanging on the bar stool. And there is his shoulder is soaked on both arms, right down to his belt from sweat. I took one look at him and I knew.
He was nervous.
I told him, I said, you son of a bitch. And next thing you know, I had all these guns. They all had the red dots on me.
Yeah.
Until today, I won't say it in front of my daughter or my sisters or family, close family. But until today, if I'd have known the torches that were waiting for me, I didn't have a gun, but I would have went for it and they would have blown me away. I would have saved money. All the money I paid the lawyers would have went to my children and I wouldn't have had none of that suffering.
Yeah, but with suffering comes opportunity. Now you have an opportunity to teach the world a lot of stuff, George. You're
Hey, I agree with that. You make a lot of sense, but my suffering was way too much. Way too much. You don't do what they did to a nonviolent first offender. 5 years in solitary, another 27 years of the worst places you can imagine. No.
Yeah, so let's talk about that, George. Tell us about what happened when you got to prison. Like where were you stationed at and all that stuff?
Well, I never left the hole from 83 to 88. Never left the hole. And then when I was sentenced, I went to the worst prison. When I was finally sentenced from the hole, I went to the worst prison in America, federal prison in America, which was Mariana in Southern Illinois. That I only held 370 worst prisoners in America.
Wow.
And for some reason, I believe in karma. I always tried to do the best I could for people, before prison, in prison. And so I wind up meeting all the guys that controlled all the prison gangs, the real gang guys, Aryan Brotherhood, Mexican Mafia, DC movement, guerrilla movement. I mean, these guys controlled all the prison system. Prison system is a very tight-knit grapevine. So, for, I don't know, I guess it's my character. Before you know it, I'm basically, making decisions and this and that. And then when we came very close, and so when I leave, once you leave that hellhole, word was sent out to all the institutions. Well, first of all, I was known as a mob guy. That helped. And then you have all these shot callers. Like I said, they're sending word, just make sure nothing happens to this guy. He's with us, this and that. So when I leave there and start hitting these other institutions, I had a lot of respect. The craziest thing it sounds, I don't know, those 370 guys, I had more time than everybody. Most of them were killers. They had life sentences, but they didn't have life, no parole. People don't understand, when you have a federal life sentence, you're eligible to go to parole board in 10 years. Okay, and then you're eligible to go 2 years every 2 years after that with a life sentence. Life, no parole, you don't even get to go into the room with the parole people. So
were you a made member of the mob?
No, still not today. If I was made member of the mob, I wouldn't be doing this interview in my home, because my PSI would have says I'm a member of Cosa Nostra, and that means you had to kill somebody. So they would not release you. They're not going to sign off on that unless you're a foreman like most of these scumbags.
So what did you officially get sentenced for?
The life no parole came under CCE, continual criminal enterprise, for the marijuana. I was charged with 2,600 pounds of marijuana with 5 people or more working for me. And you had to have 3 overacts. That's the three things you'd had to do. They created that. I never was caught with anything. It was all conspiracies. I was charged with CCE conspiracies. I never got caught with anything. So, incidentally, my guidelines were prepared by the government. When you go in front of the judge, they have a separate department on guidelines, sentencing guidelines. And they said, and they wrote in black and white, leader and managerial role, me, George Martorano, maximum sentence, 48 to 52 months. So how did I wind up with life, no parole? There wasn't some kind of injustice and backroom conspiracy. So there is more to that, very more to that, much more to that.
So how many prisons did you wind up going throughout your duration?
I lost count. I lost count. I can't remember. I lost count. Some of the worst ones, like the criminally insane unit in Springfield, Illinois, doghouse. I spent the summer of '85 there. You think One Flew Over the Cuckoo Nest was a movie, you had to be in that cell block. Well, doghouse. And don't ever believe, ladies and gentlemen, don't ever believe that those 2 nights with the full moon, that people don't go off. I witnessed it. They go off. It's sad to say, but they do go off.
What was it like in solitary confinement? I'm always curious about that. So you're
Well,
in there for 5 years.
either you survive it or you don't. It'll destroy you. It'll take your emotions. It'll take your mental. It'll take your health. I seen take guys' health. I seen guys after the year or two were locked down like that. They just 2 things will happen. Either they'll get mentally or physically stronger, or they'll curl up in a fetal position and just give up. I've seen that happen. I used to tell them, get off the bunk. Matter of fact, I had a rule right after my listen to my little breakfast and morning news and things like that. I roll up my mattress and I make a chair. I have some sheets and I tie it up and fold it over, make a chair and put it up against the wall. So you got to get off that bunk. And I never put it back until dinner time. So yeah, you have to move. You have to have a life in there. You have to write a certain amount, read a certain amount, work out a certain amount. You have to have a life. You have to create a life.
You were in there for 5 years, right?
Right.
And what can you describe what the solitary confinement looks like? Like how big's the room?
Well, all different circumstances. I was thrown in boxcar cells where there are double cell doors, where the food slots on the floor. There's a horrific story what they did to me in one jail. There's boxcar cells. There's end cells. I mean, there's different cells. I mean, we call them soft cell, a hard cell. There's a soft cell. Soft cell joint be a hole in the county jail where, they way different treatment, And then there's hard cells where they throw you back there. You don't know if you're going to come out alive. So, I experienced it all.
Well, what would you say is your number one tip to survive in that situation? Because George, you already know this, but folks, the audience, I'm not just a finance guy. A lot of my conclusions from my works, my 3 books that are up on the wall here, especially the last one, The Survival of the Richest, I had to become a survival expert and analyze the survival movement, survivalism. And all the survivalists that I've studied, they've always had incredible stories. And George is a testimony to that. So what does it take to survive 5 years in solitary confinement?
Self-hope, self-strength. 2 words. Self-hope, self-strength.
Thank you, George. All right. So after, so you moved around different cells. You're also an incredible mentor inside the prison. You want to talk about that? You had a lot of programs.
Basically, I had to keep busy mentally, or else I would have lost it. And I first started. I was self-taught writer. I wrote over 30 works. We call it works in the business. That means books, movie scripts, plays, treatments, poetry. We call it works. So it's a lot of it. It's all registered. So did a lot of that. And so I was writing in my cell for a long, long time. You guys, guys would come and ask me, about writing and this and that. And I don't know how one of the staff at an education department at some institution sent for me, and they wanted to teach creative writing, and that's how it started. And over the years, I actually created and I designed many of. Actually, I'm the first prisoner ever, which I'm proud of, in the history of the Bureau of Prisons. Incidentally, the Bureau of Prisons was established in 1936. The reason they had to have an office to oversee when they opened up Alcatraz. Alcatraz was your basically first real federal institution. Uh, and then it went on to become what it is today, couple hundred federal prisons. So, and I bring back to the Bureau of Prisons, they had to prove that I can write my own curriculum. And I even had the pleasure granted to me by actually signing my name on the graduating certificates along with associate warden. So I'm very proud of that. It was one of the deciding factors. I graduated, documented over 8,000 federal inmate students in lifestyle change classes. I was one of the principals in creating lifestyle change classes, and we started with a lifestyle change in about 97. What happened was in 1992, Congressman, I forget his name. I don't know. Anyway, he put in a bill to take away the Pell Grants. In other words, when an federal inmate graduates his GED, he was entitled to enroll in a college program. Back then, they had all community colleges throughout America come in and teach at federal prisons. So you can go on with your education after your high school diploma. So it was a Zimmerman bill. The Zimmerman bill. This Congressman Zimmerman bill, he takes that out, and also he takes away all the recreation stuff to keep your body fit. Very spiteful movement. He loses election the next year. But anyway, now you're telling an inmate he cannot educate himself anymore unless he can do distant learning. You're allowed to do distant learning, which those programs could anywhere from $300 to $900. All depends what kind of course you take. And then you had to self-taught yourself. A lot of guys cannot do that. As a teacher, I know. They need, Tony, you were a teacher, they need someone in front of them to absorb and move along with the lessons. So a lot of wardens didn't like that, stopping education. So it was talked about in Washington. So I was actually sent for by a warden that had a lot of respect, and he was talking about what should we do. Well, I said, well, we have to prepare them to the street. If we can't do that through college programs and college grants and college classrooms, we have to design some intelligent way to get them educated for the street, in which we did. One of my classes, which I'm very proud of, is called How to Start a Business for $1,000 or Less. And that's still going on in institution, because you don't come out of prison with a lot of money. And one of the things I'm very much proud of is Fathers Behind Bars, where we took estranged fathers and hopefully united them with their children. So those classes were very important to me, and are still going on. And there's others and others. So, I kept very busy. I said, it's either that or what to do. So, and in the course of staying the course and doing that, year after year after year, decade into decade, I start getting recognition from the outside world. You're never going to get out of prison unless you get recognition from the outside world. I mean, we've seen a lot of it on TV the last year, false incarceration, guys in Louisiana, southern states, they're held for 30 years, 40 some years, and then let out, exonerated. So, we have to have something in place, and that's what we did. with the lifestyle. And incidentally, they still haven't put the Pell Grants back. They still haven't put them back in prison.
Wow. So George, the whole time, I mean, I can only try to imagine to be in your shoes. If I was in your shoes, I would be thinking the whole way how I can get out of here. And I think you just gave us a hint. Like you wanted to get recognition to start. Plus, you're good with the media and all that stuff. So was that part of your plan to eventually get some spotlight on yourself to foster
Yeah,
that?
I helped a lot of guys come home with positive actions and activities and creativity. Some guys are still at home today doing well. You have to stay the course. It's not going to be. I tell them it's, you want to help yourself. You have to help yourself. No one's going to do it for you. One of my famous cases I got involved with was called John Holloway, which got me home, where we took a guy that he was a second time violent carjacker and was sentenced to a lot of years in the federal courts in New York City. And I got him a hearing in front of a tough judge. I got him a hearing. I took a shot and wrote this letter. And when anybody knows federal law, when you write a letter to the judge, you can just, it's like folding it and throwing out a window, because clerks hardly ever, the judge's clerk never puts a letter unless it's legally accepted in other words, it gets a docket number or filed by a lawyer. So when an inmate writes a letter, it really doesn't go anywhere. Unfortunately, about a month later, he come running into my classroom. George, they call me George, he knows me good. And he, read this. And he got a docket number. He got a hearing.
Wow.
And that's out of Holloway. Then we go on. I don't want to get into the Holloway series, but that's what got me a hearing. And then I refiled it because I created Holloway in the Second Circuit, and then I addressed myself into the Third Circuit. So what I taught, getting back to the students, what I taught, you're not getting out of jail overnight. That's not happening. It's very, very rare, far between. So you have to work hard. You have to work hard. I'm not, all my students, I told them, I'll meet you halfway, but I'm not doing it all the way. So don't waste my time. That was one of my main things. Do not waste my time in my classrooms. Either you had to have a GED or you had to be enrolled in a GED.
Thank you, George. So George, just two quick stories, and then we'll wrap it up. We'll get into, because I got a lot of questions for you that'll eventually integrate the story as well. Two things that I know that you probably want to talk about: the Conair story, and then you had John Gotti as your cellmate for 2 years, which I think is important to mention as well.
Yeah, well, let's get back to John. John was before the Conair situation, and yeah, we were cellies from 86 to 87. And that was the first indictment he had. That's the indictment he walked out on. And then he came back. He got indicted another 2.5 years later. But we were very, very, very close. When you're in the cell. The first year, we were in 22-hour lockup together.
Wow.
So you get to know someone, and very, very respectful of him. I know him in a light. I think it's a personal light to me, between me and him. And he was very, very. The books he read were unbelievable. He read very intellectual books, things like that. He didn't read any fiction and things like that. Not that I'm against any of that, but John read extremely intelligent books from great writers, and he was very disciplined. But he was John Gotti. He was a gangster's gangster. And matter of fact, I'm negotiating right now. I got a meeting tomorrow. I got to go up to New York. They're doing a series on there. There was a show out in 2020 called Fear City. Did very well, but the New York mob. Now they're adding some more episodes concerning John, and they got a hold of me when they heard that I was the celly. So I'm going to I had one meeting, and I'll have another meeting scheduled. So maybe I'll be on the show talking about our friendship.
That's awesome. Thank you, George. And what about the Conair situation? That's a very
Oh,
interesting story.
oh boy, that was Christ almighty, that was 2010, 2010. Forget what month it was. 2010. I think it was the month of August. I had just lost a hearing with the famous lawyer Roy Black, and I was headed back from Philadelphia back to the prison I was at. The prison I was at the time, I believe it was in Louisiana or something. So anyway, I had to go to a transport facility. You fly into a transport facility in the middle of Oklahoma, all these prison jets come. And people don't understand it. And over America, there's about, just in federal planes, there's at least a half a dozen a day flying around with close to 300 prisoners on it.
Wow.
Every day, Monday through Friday. People don't know that flying over the air, and they're in the restricted airspace. They're restricted space when they land. And I went through years of that torture. And we're up in the sky, and when I know I'm going to travel, I know how to jail. After the years that I did, you better know how to jail. So I would make sure I could stay up late and get good and tired, a lot of push-ups, just sip a little water. You don't want to drink too much water because you're in that plane. It's difficult to go to the bathroom. You're chained like an animal. And so I hit the plane, and the next thing I want to do, I'm up all night. I'm beat. I figure I want to be on this plane 8 hours, 10 hours, sometimes more, 12, 15 hours. You want to sleep. Only thing you can do, just sit there chained up and sleep. And I'm up in the air. I'm sleeping. I feel something around my feet, and I look down, and I see this foot, this big long foot, and his toes are trying to grab something between my legs. I don't know what it is. I don't have my glasses. I look down. I think it's a pen. And a buddy of mine, two buddies of mine, a few rows back, and they're saying, "No, Georgia, they've been trying to get something under your seat." And I look good at God. I said, "Oh my God, it was a handcuff key." And on the plane, they're about 3 inches long with the grip. And they are not only they're handcuffed, they're leg iron and handcuffed. They're dual key. They're called speed keys. So the marshals can get them on and off you real quick. So I said, "Well, there goes my appeal. I'm going to be dead. Because anybody don't understand, you ain't coming out of handcuffs in a prison transport over America. That ain't happening. If anybody commandeers that plane, that will be blown out of the sky. They're not going to let any prisoners fly around with a federal plane." And so I look behind me, and I see there were some Mayan pilots that didn't understand English. And they probably had some serious sentences. And these nuts, they don't understand. I said, "You're going to get us killed." I'm trying to talk between the seat. "You're going to get us killed. Because I know if you hold that hand key, they're going to have to kill you. There's no saying, here's your key. They're going to kill you. In split seconds, you're going to have to die, and anybody around that key is going to be killed." And we just what happens. We were just past that a little section, where they served the food. And there was only a few rows back there, and that's where we were at when this went down. And I had one shot, so I try to retrieve the key so I can get it away from me. And I'm actually having a wrestling match with these feet on there because these stupid son of a bitches, excuse my language, they don't understand you're going to die. So I finally get a hold of the key, and then I said, "I got one shot," and I tossed it to about 2 feet away and it landed right in the groove so I can get away from these nuts that were trying to get it. So Marshall comes by. I says, "Listen," I says, "I want to speak to the head marshal." So they hear that all day long. Guys on a plane are complaining. I said, "No, I got to see. It's a security issue. I want to speak to the head marshal." So he came. I says, "Listen, I'm going to need a report prepared because I'm not stupid. I know I'm going to get the worst out of this, and I'm going to try to get the best out of this." So I says, I want to make you a report on I got something that belongs to, and I showed him the key. Well, guess what? I got the worst out of it. They came and hog tied me, put a thing over my head. I want to know how I got it was a big thing. When we landed, I was the first person off the plane. The FBI were there to take me away. And I figured, let them sort it out. I just, on the way out, I'm yelling back to my buddies, tell them the story. See if you can get them to hear the story. Because I know they're going to do a cover up. The air marshals are not going to lose their job because you dropped the key. Well, anyway, it took me 4 years to get a document that credited me to that action where I prevented a hijacking attempt rather. Took me 4 years to get the document. And I had help from people that believe my story within the Bureau of Prisons. I had help to get that document.
Did that have anything to do with the movie Conair though?
No, the movie was before that.
Oh, it was before it.
The papers called it Conair.
Oh, okay.
We called it Conair. Yeah. So, but it was scary. And I knew I was going to get the worst end out of it. I knew it.
Wow.
Yeah.
You got some great stories, George. Well, thank you, George. So I guess we could just skip ahead because we'll get back to some of the other stuff and the other questions. What was it like the day you were released? How did you feel?
Well, I'm telling I want to get a little break. Can we get a little break?
Yeah, sure. You want to take it now or?
Yeah, we're going over an hour.
Okay. All right. We'll take a break, folks. We'll be right back. You won't notice a thing.
This meeting is being recorded.
Okay, folks, we're back. You probably didn't feel a thing. So we got George Martorano here, and we're just wrapping up the story. You got an incredible story here, folks. So George, yeah, let's get the end of that story. So how did it feel the first day you actually came out of prison? You were released.
Well, let's see how that unfolded. Well, you had to go back to actually 10 months prior to release. We had a hearing under Holloway, like I spoke earlier. I created Holloway to get relief, and we had a hearing. I think 8 to 10 months prior to my release on Holloway, and what we prepared in the judge's chambers was my dossier of all my works and credits, my creativity work, my work as a teacher, mentor, my work in suicide companionship, which I devised some ways that they could watch people when they're first arrested. That's when you have a high suicide rate, first arrest. So I designed a little program for that, and she, what I understand from the attorney, she hovered over this all this paperwork. It was laid out on the table. She hovered over for about 10, took her time, 10, 12 minutes, and she turned around and she said, "This is extraordinary." And she wanted to know why the government does not going to agree to my release. And this went on. So she said, what I'm going to do is I'm going to leave George's motion, Mr. Martorano's motion, on my desk. You figure out a way, because I contemplate releasing him on the Holloway, which the government, federal government, didn't want, which would have opened a floodgate. Holloway was two-pronged. You had to be languishing in prison, and you had to show a good prison record. So mine was simple. I languished, and I had a stellar prison record. So they didn't want that case because they said Martorano's too popular in the Third Circuit, let alone in America, where they all jump on that case. It'll open up a floodgate, which incidentally, that's what's wrong with this country. They'll fight you. They'll give injustice even though when justice is right in front of them. So anyway, we did all that, and then they kept saying, we need one more thing. Well, we need something to hang a hat on. My lawyer was baffled, and I was baffled. My lawyers were baffled. What more can an individual do? What can a man do more after 32 years? And it just so happens that I don't know what to do. I did everything possible. Just so happens I was at a compound where it was ready to riot, was ready to kick off with two gangs, and this workout bench where I worked out in the morning. It was actually like a bleacher. It was the back of the, odd plot of the prison yard. I do my run, do my upper body, and I noticed pieces of the steel off the benches, aluminum steel, were being weighed. And that's it. Inmates know how to make those. What do you call them? It cuts through steel. And I noticed portions of, so I knew somebody. I had been in jail long enough to know somebody's making knives. And I knew these two gangs were ready to go at it. So I did an investigation. I found out who the knife maker was, and he was a drug addict, heroin addict. And he was doing something that he can get killed for. He was actually selling knives to the both gangs. He didn't care. He was trying to pay his dope bill. People don't understand. Some guys got dope bills $100 a day in prison. And so I went to the guy. I knew he was a drug addict, and I buy all the shank. They call them shanks. There's over 40 of them in a bullet case, and I took it to the staff that I knew. He was a good guy. He says, "Listen, you all know this. These gangs are going to go at it. Here's the weapons. I'm not going to give you a name, but hopefully it'll save a lot of lives." And they did go off. They went off, but they didn't have all the weaponry they needed, and they basically just used their belts and socks with locks on and stuff like that. Nobody was killed. Actually, they went at it twice, and we were locked down for about a month. But at the end of that month, no, about 3 weeks, end of that 3 weeks, I got a report from the lieutenant. Said, "Wasn't for Martorano, we had bodies all over this place." So that was the last document that they needed. And they said, "Oh, okay, now we're going to go to let him out." So now they call my lawyer, Theodore Simon, great international lawyer. Incidentally, he got Amanda Knox out of Italy, very intelligent attorney. And so he goes over to the Justice Department here in Philly. He figured that they're going to lay out my release some way, shape, or form. And he walked in there and he said he had to take a step back because every federal department head was there in the office. FBI, 2 or 3 people from the United States Attorney's Office, DEA, homicide. I mean, everybody was there. And they didn't want, the prosecutor's office didn't want to go unless everybody signed off. So after doing 32 years, doing all these heroic deeds, they still didn't have no one that had the courage to put one signature for my release. They needed joint signatures. So, and that goes back to a saying that's been around in this country for a long time. The hardest case to beat is a frame. So here was me, 32 years, did things that never been done before, never slacked on the intelligence to get free. Now, how's a poor, ordinary guy? I'm not saying I'm special, but it's just some poor soul got caught up, and he just doesn't have the mental gumption to put this together. He's never coming home. He or she's never coming home. In our system, they're never coming home. So hopefully from this kind of broadcast and things like that, we have to make a difference.
So George, how did it feel the day you were released?
Oh, getting back to that.
Yeah.
Well, it was on October 5th, 2015. I walked out in the morning. Late afternoon. And nothing. I just walked out. My family was waiting for me. We went to the house of my sisters, Mary Ann, and we had a great time. We had days of celebrating and food. And I never forget, my lawyer stood with us for a couple of days. And it was in the evening. Everybody just sort of like found little spots there. I was out in the front porch, and I'm just sitting there. And he came out and he's staring at me. I said, "What the hell's the matter with this guy?" He says to me in an even voice, he says, "Who the hell are you?" I said, "What do you mean?" He says, "Who the hell are you?" He said, "I've been with you for 2 days and you act like you've never been in prison." So I said, "Well, listen, that's how I roll. What can I tell you?"
That's funny. So did you live in Florida after you left for
I stayed in
few years?
Florida for a few months
Few months?
for my acclimation to freedom, and then I moved back up to Philly. I had my lawyer move me back up to Philly because my mom wasn't feeling good, and I was a good move because she passed away. I was only with her 2.5 years, and then she passed away. But I had a great time with her. Great time.
Okay. Thank you, George. And maybe in just like 30 seconds or so, can you sum up? Because you only were released about, what, 6 years ago now?
Well, I like to talk a little bit about cannabis industries. That's all right.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Came home and I always, like I said, I always worked. I worked in prison, worked before prison, worked. Sometimes it wasn't always honest work, but I always did something. So I came home and I started cannabis industry. I own 4 brands. This is one of the brands, the Grow Father brand. We have beers. We have mugshot. I have my prison mugshot on one can of the beer. So we're developing that, and we have stores, hip hemp cafes, and things like that. So I think it's it's a good example, I believe, for a prisoner to come home and do. It doesn't have to open up business. We employ people, which I'm very proud of. We have young people jobs, especially from North Philly, which is a very troubled area. There's kids need jobs, so we try to do that. And it's about coming home and pay your taxes. You got to pay your taxes and do the right thing. So, when a prisoner should come home and vote again, if he's paying taxes and things like that, he can be a plus. I have a friend that he did 25 years and he has a trucking company that I help him build, and he's doing very well with it. So we want to you always want to give that example. Always want to. It's very important to just because a guy was thrown away, he needs a second chance. And President Obama stated that he was a factor too. A year or two prior to my release, he stated more than once and speaking openly that you got to give a guy a second chance. You can't give life, no parole for a nonviolent first offender. Or it's 3 strikes you're out for a guy stealing a slice of pizza for his 3rd strike. So that stuff, it still hasn't stopped, but it's a slow crawl, but we're getting there.
That's awesome. Thank you, George. All right, George, we're going to get to the fun stuff now. So got a lot of questions. So maybe if we could do about 30 seconds to a minute, each one will make good timing. So you already mentioned some of these things, but I just want to summarize, like your books, for example. You wrote over, I think, 32 books in prison, which is incredible. And correct me if I'm wrong. And can you summarize those books if you know them off the top of your head?
Well, I wrote many things. I wrote fiction and nonfiction, plays, and basically many works. I'm getting the itch to write again. I haven't written since I'm home. I've been a lot of filming, but I'm dying to write my life story when I can get it in the right situation, contracted. I wrote many works. I wrote 2 million words in freehand.
Wow.
That's a lot of writing, a lot of nights and hours of writing freehand. So I like to write, but I haven't had a chance since I come home. I got bills to pay, but we're doing a lot of filming. I have a film out on National Geographic. I have a film coming out with Reels in April, and I have the Fresh Air Film Festival on the Fresh Air. But I won that. I won the LA. I actually won the. I have here. It's a Telly Award. This is a Telly Award, very prestigious. Is on. I won that in LA. There's only 3 awards given. It's gold, silver, bronze. I won the bronze, but I'm very proud of that because our film was low budget compared to the much more expensive documentary. So very proud of that. And like I said, we won the Fresh Film Festival. We actually, it was only 3 awards given to that. It was in Phoenixville this summer, Phoenixville, Pennsylvania, sponsored out of LA, Fresh Film Festival, and we won every award. And I felt a little bad because there was some other good films that could have shared the award, but at least give me 1 and 2. So I felt a little bad, but we went up against over 200 documentaries, and it was narrowed down to 12 that was shown, and I won everything.
Wow. Congrats, George. I didn't realize that. So,
Yeah,
and that was the
Fresh,
summer.
Fresh Film Festival. It's all documented. Fresh Film Festival.
What's it called?
So
The film?
Fresh Film Festival. Yes.
Wow.
It's based out of LA. They bring it east every year. It's based out of LA, but they bring it east. This is the first time it wasn't in Philly. They brought it to Phoenixville for I guess the COVID, and it's a different situation when they showed it. That particular county out there opened it up a little more for COVID, with restaurants and stuff like that. So we did very well. I got something else coming up. Concentrating on naturally trying to get my life story completely out there. But it takes work. It's anybody, young people out there in filming and writing, take patience, take your time. You'll get there. And by getting there, you're learning a lot, you experience a lot, and you share that on.
Thank you, George. What was the name of that film that won the Telly Award?
Should have said that first. Life, No Parole, the George Martorano story. You can. There's a trailer up on YouTube. Yeah, on my YouTube, there's a trailer up. Or you can go to this Fresh Film Festival, or just Google it. Just Google Life, No Parole, the George Martorano story. It's out there.
Thank you, George. And George, next question. How does your story fit into the film The Irishman?
The Irishman. Well, I knew all those characters. Let's start with Robert De Niro. Well, I don't know personally, but I've been a fan of his, and he played this Frank Sharon, who I know very, very well. Knew him all my life, and Frank was in prison with me. It was the second time I was in Springfield, Missouri. The first time I was in a hellhole in criminal insane unit. The second time I wasn't. And Frank approached me and he says, he got a chance to make a few dollars for his daughter. And he was his, but he had to write a few chapters of his story to get the advance. And there was a few mob bosses there, friends of mine, Tony Ducks, Fat Tony Solano, Frank Angelo, Tom Nix. These are all bosses. And so he asked me to go over and talk to him. And I went and I said, the guy can pick up a few dollars. He ain't going to incriminate nobody. He's going to write around it, No, the old timers, they can't do that. No, they can't do that. They says that. So I says, so I go back to Frank. I said, let a little time go by and I'll hit him up again. I know they're going to shoot you down first. So I waited. Some time went by and I hit him again. I says, let the guy write. Let him write. But he won't do it without, he don't want to do it sneaky. He wants to do it. No. I said, I'll tell you what. Now I changed my tactics. I've been these kind of guys all my life. They respect me and I respect them. I said, I tell you what, you got a room full of money. You got 2 rooms full of money. God knows you got a house full of money. Break the guy off. They only give him, I think they were going to give him like $35,000 advance, which was a lot of money for a guy doing time and help his family. So I says, break him off. That's all. And we end this. Oh, now they changed their tune because I know how these old timers are when they hit their pocket. They don't want to hear this. They said, okay, just as long as, so I got to be okay. They're right. And then I never thought he would, because I know Frank was a pretty big guy. And he had a hand like that. So I didn't think he was going to actually try to sit down. And sure enough, he did. And the book finally got made. And then it was optioned by Robert De Niro way years before it was actually shot. So that's Frank. I go way back with Frank. And then there was Russell Buffalino. Joe Pesci paid Russell. And I know Russell. I did time with Russell. He used to live next to him. started me in Leavenworth, and Russell was a character. And he always bought a little too much from this prison commissary. He always bought too much fruit, things like that. And they used to have early chow for the elderly. We had to go to chow hall first. So he always would leave the cell block before me. And I always would sneak in to his room and rob a banana because the bananas would be going bad, you know. So, and then I'm sitting at the same table with him. And one morning he says, Georgie, I got a problem. I said, what's that? Your problem's my problem. He says, I think somebody's coming in and stealing my bananas. They don't think I'm counting them. I says, what? You mean somebody's going in your cell and stealing your bananas? And I got the banana and I'm cutting the number. So, well, guess what? We're going to find this guy and he's going to have a problem. he liked to hear that, the old man. I was, so I let a little time go by. It didn't steal. Then I went and stole. And this went back and back. This went back and forth. So just a great old man. And, you know, and he was very, now in the movie, he had to have dialogue. I mean, come on, you know, but in real life, Russell was a man of few words. You'd be with him for an hour or two and he may say 3 sentences. Yeah. He listened and then he would say something. He never would add to the conversation. He listened to you or more than 1, 2, 3 is, and then he would say something. So, but in the movie, he had dialogue because, you know, it was a movie. And then, let's see who else was in the movie there. Well, my godfather, Angelo Bruno, who incidentally, Harvey Keitel looked a lot like him. He had this, he had some characteristics, you know. And
I didn't watch the movie, George. I hate to say it.
You didn't watch
Harvey
it?
Keitel played Angelo? I still haven't watched it now. He did?
Yeah, he played Angelo. And they,
Wow.
the movie opens up at the Villa di Roma, which they're friends of mine. You know that family. They're good people. The restaurant's been there 80 years. So, and I liked the movie. But like I said, I had a personal situation because I got him the okay to be able to start writing. So that was that situation.
That's an incredible story. So how come you weren't in there?
No,
You should have been the lead role.
When that was going on, I was about 15 or 16 when that thing with Hoffa. So I was a kid. So, but whether he did it or not, Frank, who knows? It's all in the past. I'm hoping the daughter did okay from the production, you know, because that was all about. He wanted to see his daughter earn money. So Robert De Niro optioned that. You know, when you option a piece of work, you either buy it or option. So the SETI option was 25,000 a year. You have to pay that every year.
Yeah.
Either you buy it or you relinquish the option. Either you buy it. Now the option might have been to buy the whole project. It might have been, who knows, $1 million. But when De Niro paid for 7, 8 years, he paid for the option rights to develop.
Wow.
That's how it's done in the industry.
Thank you, George. All right, George. So next question. I'm actually going to skip this one. I kind of asked this already. Can you describe yourself, or do you describe yourself as an entrepreneur? I mean, put all the different jobs you had in the course of your life. I mean, some you were an employee.
I just, you know, I ain't a dumb guy, you know, just I'm not lazy. I think to be an entrepreneur, you can't be lazy. You're just not lazy. And if you get up and do something, something should develop from it. As simple as that.
So you're an entrepreneur, right?
Right.
Okay. All right. Good question. I mean, good answer. And then here's one for you. Where do you think that you would have been today if you stayed on the right track and didn't go away to prison? Now, you actually had a normal, well, not a normal life. you were actually very odd in South Philly. And then I could speak from this concept, this specific subject. You had money. A lot of people in the neighborhood didn't have money. You actually had money. You had a great job. You had a great path that you didn't have to do that, but you had the option. Most people didn't. Like my parents that died, grandparents died broke. You know, you could have went that way, but you didn't. So what do you think would have been a result if you didn't go to jail? If you stayed on the right track, what do you think?
Oh yeah, I would have been successful. I mean, I was successful until I went to jail. I had franchises and, made the mistakes, and you know, again, it still baffles me why they wanted to make me die in prison. And incidentally, there's something that I found out after my release, that there was one government official that he stood 12 years over retirement to make sure that I died in prison concerning my appeals. So that's how evil they were. They allowed him to stay 12 years over retirement because he kept saying, there's more investigations on me. There's more investigations. There's more investigations for murders and this and that, which was all bullshit. But his job was to make sure I died in prison. So, as a matter of fact, my release, after he finally could not keep up with his game anymore, 2 weeks later, I was out of prison. So it was all orchestrated in time. Like I said, I'm George Martorano. I am who I am. My father was Raymond Long, George Martorano. I am what I am. He was who he was, rather. But my father fought his way out after 18 years on a trumped up murder charge. So, what I'm trying to say is, there's few of us that finally get out alive, but there's so many there that don't. They're going to languish there till they die.
Thank you, George. All right, George, we're gonna have a little fun. You're a master storyteller. One of the things I learned about you over the years. First of all, why is being a master storyteller so important? Then I want you to share two really cool stories that you've told me over the years that I think are really good. So why is being a master storyteller so important? And maybe some tips too.
Well, very simple. Like I said, I was a creative writer, teacher for many, many years. And I used to tell my students, what's the greatest short story book ever written? And the stories repeat throughout life. And they couldn't figure it out. And what it is the Bible. The Bible is the greatest short story book ever. And those short stories are repeated through man's goodness and man's evil. So the stories, whoever, anybody knows civil law. Civil suits, when people sue, it's the story that wins. Whoever has the best story wins. But your story, of course, in civil court, story has to be backed up by facts, not by case law. Big difference. In criminal court, it's case law. It's not facts of a story. But in civil action, it's reverse. So the story always wins. The best story always wins. I mean, and throughout history, we had storytellers. They went from town to town and told stories. And one of the great Western writers, Louis L'Amour, he prided himself as a campfire storyteller. So I always try to tell stories. And I was living in hell in Marion, Illinois, 370 guys. Actually, you only see the guys on your cell block. It was only a 34 on the cell block. So you want to hear some stories from them guys. So you hear their stories. So you got to figure, how do I counteract something that? So stories. When you're in 24-hour, we're only allowed out of our cells 11 hours a week. So when you get out of the cell, you want to talk. So you want to tell a story. So stories are so important in prison. And today, I'm getting older. I don't feel like going around yapping and telling stories, but I do the best I can with the little I have.
It's a great point you made up, George. I was thinking you were coming at it from a different angle, but surviving in prison, the story really gives you that little fuel, that fire to keep you going. I mean, you live for the story, hearing other people's stories, and just it makes things more interesting, right?
When I first got there, they couldn't figure out, you're not on the first offender. What do you got, life, no parole? We never met nobody life, no parole. One guy says, listen, I killed two guys. I killed one outside and I killed a guy in here. He says, I still can go to the parole board. He said, I'll probably never get out when I'm allowed to go. So they couldn't figure it out. And I tell them, no, look at you don't want to. I try to tell them a little bit about my case, but it's complicated. So I got tired of here. You know what? I said, yeah, all right, he's got me. You know, I got life, no parole. And they said, what? Why? They all, I said, I was a hitman for the CIA and I went and rat on the CIA. Oh, that's why. Now we understand. Now we understand. So that's something they could absorb. But trying to talk to them intelligently, you know, these guys, they're a different kind of people.
So
Believe it or
George,
not.
two quick stories I think would be great to share if you don't mind. I remember you telling me this one about Lebec Finn, the $1,500 suit, and
Oh, yeah. Well, back when it was, I think it was on, what was it on Spruce?
yeah, I think so.
Spruce, it was been there. I heard it was here way into my incarceration. It was here 20, 25 years. And it was not a big place. It was a BYOB. And it was extremely good food. And you had to give, it took 2 weeks to get a reservation there. So there was a socialite. I was, that I was on a date with. Very, she didn't know who I was. I used a different name, you know. I was a little bit of a player back then, you know. So, we're at that was during the mob war. You know, bodies were being found around the city. So I didn't know what was going on that night. So I'm at dinner and I hear Martorano, put your hands on the table. Get up slow. Put your hands around your back. It was these homicide detectives. They were looking for anybody connected to the mob. You know, when they find a body, the first thing they do is go around scooping people up for questioning. Well, I didn't know the guy was going to be killed, and he was found in back of one of my restaurants. And and they're saying Martorano back away from the table, and the socialite looks and says, "I think you have the wrong gentleman." Because I'm using a different name. So, and I had no intentions of hurting her or cheating her. I just, you know, was out on a date with a pretty woman. I don't want to know too much about her. I don't want her to know too much about me. Just have a good night. And anyway, they took me out of there, took me down to Roundhouse. And Roundhouse was a pretty rough place back then with homicide detectives. And they chained me up in the back cell in the back, and they went to work on me with a phone book. And listen, getting hit with a phone book ain't nothing nice. And they were upset about all these murders. I said, I ain't got nothing to do with the murder. I was having dinner. And they held me all night. Finally, through the grapevine, they tracked me down. My lawyer came and got me out. And I never forget when they released me, I was sitting on a curve outside the Roundhouse. And I called somebody over, and there was a little liquor store across the street. I said, go in there. I says, I don't know how much money I gave him. Go give me a pint of cognac, because I was in pain from getting beat up with that phone books. I sat there and sipped, and then waited a couple of days. I figured, let me go back to our place of business. It was, like I said, it was very prominent. I don't want to mention in our city. I apologized. And when I went back there, her secretary came out and says, I'm not going to mention the name, Mrs. So-and-so says she don't want to see you no more. So that ended that. And well, guess what? Well, when I got arrested, she wrote a few times and she wanted to know if she could help. But one thing I don't do is I don't put people in my, in my criminal problems. I don't put people in that. I handle them myself with my lawyers.
That's thank you, George. Appreciate it. And the other story was about the guy who walked in to the saloon and made $4,000 because he told everybody his mom died. You remember that one? Then you saw.
Oh, that guy. Yeah. That wasn't a saloon. That was well, I got a funnier story than that. The Irish K&A gang. I don't know if anybody ever. There's a book out there written by Alan Blowthorn. It's about the K&A gang, famous Irish gang at Kensington, Allegheny. They were one of the best second-story people in the country. And the Irish have a certain way in their lives. They're fun people, especially the Irish women. They're so funny. Anyway, I never forget. Me and my father were standing out front of our restaurant, one of our restaurants, And we're having a conversation. So an ice cream truck pulls up. It was the old panel type ice cream trucks, where you had to stand outside the truck and open the door and serve the person. You didn't serve from inside. So we're standing there, and a guy comes up. His name was Berker. He was famous Irish gangster. He says, "Hey, we're trying to raise money to build a very old tool." I think his name was Old Tool. Well, he said, "Well, wait a minute. We gave you money. We gave you money weeks ago to bury that guy." He says, "Yeah, well, somebody," he blamed another guy. They took the money and they went and gambled the money. So now the funeral parlor threw him out. They said, "Come and get this body." So they went and got an ice cream truck. This is a true story, ladies and gentlemen. So he says, "Come here, I'll show you." So we walk out to the curb. He opens the door, and sure enough, I see two feet there. There's a guy there. So I says to my father, "Look at these." I says, "Does he have a family?" They says, "Yeah, they're concerned. They want to bury." So my father says, "Listen, we're not going to give you any more money. What we'll do is," there was a funeral parlor right in the neighborhood. So I went over there and we made a deal that they bury the guy and they pay him so much a month. And I don't know what happened with that, but they had the guy in an ice cream truck. That was a funnier story than it. What was the other story you wanted me to tell? I forgot.
Oh, it was about the guy who he walked in this. I think.
Oh yeah, we're hanging uptown. I don't know.
And then you saw him on South Street, and he was with his mom.
No, I used to have my clothes made in Gennaro, custom made clothes on 17th Street. I think between Locust and Walnut. Very famous place to get our shirts and our suits made there. And the guy comes in, and we knew the guy. He's a South Philly guy, nice guy, crying. His mom died, and he didn't have the money to bury her. And so we collected $4,000. It just so happens he caught the right guys. Who chipped in 600, 500. There he goes. About 2 weeks later, there was a place on 10th Street that we used to get our Strombolis. Me and Donnie. Was the guy Donnie, real nice guy. Big Donnie was my partner back then in certain things. And we're getting our Strombolis. They're making this Strombolis. I used to take them home to the kids. And me and Donnie's in line. We turn around. Who's standing there? It's the mother. I think her name was Conchetta. Donnie looked at me. We looked at her. And we didn't say no, but we finally seen that son of a bitch about a week or two later. Well, we cursed him out. "You dirty son of a bitch."
He took $4,000 and said his mom was died, and then you see him with his mom.
We seen her in line.
That's incredible. Only in South Philly. Only in Philly. Philly's is a big city. We got a lot of stories like that. All right, thank you, George. Appreciate it. All right, so maybe about a minute. Rest of these questions. Describe some of the most horrible events that you witnessed in jail. I mean, do you have any maybe specific things you want to talk about real quick?
Oh my God, horrible things.
I know you mentioned riots and hurricanes.
I still don't go into crowds. I don't go see concerts and stuff like that. Been and lived in too many prison riots. I seen the worst of man. I seen guys get laying on the floor, getting steel pushed through them so bad that sparks come out the back of them. So I experienced all that. There was a kid on the news this morning. He did just 2 weeks false incarceration to Hertz, supposed to be Hertz rent a car. I don't believe it's Hertz. I don't even want to mention Hertz, but anyway, something false incarceration. And the kid spent 2 weeks in there. He said the most horrific thing he ever experienced. And he did 2 weeks in the county jail. So, maximum security prisons. I've seen riots where death count the next day be 6, 7, 8 guys. I've seen helicopters fly out, 20, 30 guys butchered. We was in jail in Florida one time. There were so many guys stabbed up that the hospital had to take over a floor because now you had to have security watching all these guys. It got so bad on the news. Patients were leaving the hospital. So many stabbed up prisoners were coming there. And these guys, you see them on the news on the gurneys getting carried in, and they're tattooed all over their face and tattooed all over, blood all over, So, and we still have over incarceration. We have these crowded prisons. We have no relief under the minimum mandatories. It's still there, where you have to do 85% of your time. So, I could tell you stories just with COVID recently, and horror stories in prisons with the COVID, where they would just take you out of cell blocks and throw you in tents in the yard and just keep moving you all around. They couldn't take you to another jail for what? So you just shuffled all around the jail. I mean, it was terrible. There was one situation in a federal prison in Louisiana where the whole town, was most of the guards worked at the prison. I think it was Pollock in Louisiana, and the whole town of Pollock got a bad COVID, numerous COVID infections. So, I mean, the stories will always be horrific in prison around the world. There's unless you go to countries like Sweden, Denmark, places like that, they approach it differently. But this country, and now we have these young people, especially in our city. They've been in juvie since they were kids and young adults. So it's nothing. Jail means nothing to them. Jail means nothing to them. They've been in jail all their lives.
If you did the same amount of time, let's say in a non-developed country, or not, I don't like to say non-developed, but like one of the not so wealthy countries, or maybe in South America or Africa or some parts of.
I did time in South America, a little bit of time.
Oh, you
I
did?
time to make it. I mean, it's not nice, but money goes a long way. You get some money is a big difference there.
So
Unless
it
you
would have
got
been a different
As
experience.
long as you're not political. As long
Yeah.
as you're not political, you got a problem. As long as you're not political over the countries.
Thank you, George. Here's an interesting question. I've asked you this in various forms before. What is harder, surviving prison or surviving the outside world struggling to pay bills? You're kind of touching into my area now.
Well, not you. But my personal opinion is struggling outside world. I mean, prison, you're going to get 3 squares a day. They're going to educate you if you want to absorb all of your education. To me, I look at it a little differently. I mean, I've seen jails where they were horrific to do time. There's bad jails and there's worse jails. I know there's good jails, there's not so good jails, and then there's horrific jails. So I seen county jails. One of the worst riots I went through was at a county jail. I mean, they set fire to the cell block, and I've been on burning cell blocks twice over the years. And you better know what you're doing to survive. This flames don't kill you; it's the smoke. Smoke will kill you way before the flames. So, what you have to do is, and an old timer taught me, you get your blanket and you soak it in the toilet, and you drape it over you, and you put your head down in that toilet, and you keep flushing because the flush will give you some better air. So I stood that day went like that for a day and a half.
Wow.
When they burned down Atlanta Penitentiary with the Marilito riots, I actually had to eat that way to survive.
That works, that method?
Yeah, that's the only thing that's going to work.
Wow.
Unless the flames when the flames get you, you're dead. But the smoke kills you. I don't know how many guys died in smoke inhalation. They don't know how to do it. They don't know how to survive. The only fresh air you're going to get is through that toilet.
So you're saying that even despite all the crazy stuff you've been through, you think you would say that it's harder to survive?
That's the kind of guy I am. I'm not saying that verbatim. It's just the kind of guy I am. I think the poor people have it tough out here. They do.
Yeah.
They have it tough.
I just find that really interesting hearing from you. I mean, this is some of the conclusions I had too, George. Like a lot of the studying about wealth so long, it's like most people take it for granted what we're doing out here and think it's easy. But once you got a responsibility for a family, it's extremely difficult, because you got to pay bills. You got to find that source of income, right? Like what happens in prisons, and nothing to you. You have a very unique situation, but in general, they're surviving by what I call survival by a third party. The government's paying for their food.
Well, the taxpayer, they pay.
Yeah, the taxpayer.
I mean, you're not getting the greatest food. You're getting decent food. You're getting decent medical. And I haven't been I haven't been in jail for close to 6 years now. I don't know. I probably got worse before. It always gets worse before it got better. And it was getting worse there. Matter of fact, the warden, when he said goodbye to me when I left, he said, "You're getting out of the good time, George." He said, I'm putting in for early retirement because my gang cap, he just Washington just told me your gang cap went from 40 to 80.
Mm,
So he had 10 gangs on the compound already.
wow.
Okay, now the compound only holds 1,800, so now it's half your compound's going to be gangs. So how you going? They're going to run the prison. So now I got along with the gangs because I used to tell the shot callers who run the gangs, you still have to educate them. You have to educate them because these gangs don't want to go to the classroom. And the gangs were getting more. They were getting more younger, more violent. And the warden says it's a good time to go.
Thank
So
you,
my
George.
classrooms was getting more difficult for getting the young people. I was getting more middle-aged and older into the classrooms than the younger inmates.
Thanks, George. George, and maybe 30 seconds or less, what was your secret to surviving 32 years in prison? Like, can you boil that down into a quick summary?
Like I said, I don't give up. I mean, there's no giving up in me, you know. I don't give up. Very simple. Don't give up. You have good blood. You have. I think it's most important to people. You know, people love you. I think that gives me strength. I know I have a lot of love from a lot of family and friends, so that gives me strength. Love is important to give, and it's important to always show affection towards those you love and those close friends.
That leads me to my next question, George. So a guy named Viktor Frankl, I don't know if you ever read his book. It's changed my life. It's called A Man's Search for Meaning, and it's about purpose. The guy just survived four I believe concentration camps during the Nazi war, and he lists three major purposes for why people want to keep going. So would you say that you had a purpose when you were in prison to keep going? And I think you already mentioned it. You loved your family, which is one of his
Well,
purposes.
a lot of guys they get in jail. They paint. Some jail has some very good artists. I have a friend of Leonard Pelletier. His artwork's very sought after. I have another good friend, Ronnie Chandler. He paints clowns, amazing. So, and you have people that do jewelry. They have leather craft. There's a lot of things that you can develop while you're there. If you use it wisely, you must use it wisely. So I'm sitting there and I'm getting older. I ain't getting younger. So I guess I just wanted to keep. There was always you had your holidays where you relaxed a little bit. You had your Sunday and then I had my visits from my loved ones and family. So that got me by. But I had, like I said, through my exploits and my creative writing and my media, I had a lot of media while I was away because I started getting word, started getting around the country, different places in the country. There's an injustice here, so we still, thank God, America still has a voice for injustice.
Thank you, George. Now, George, this is something that you've experienced that I think relates to a lot of people right now. When you were in prison, you actually lost several very close loved ones. How do you deal with losing loved ones, knowing that you couldn't be there for them in their last moments?
And you got to mourn. I mean, if you're a human being with emotions, you go through your mourning process, which I did. I went through too many mourning processes, which one was very detrimental to me. Which your losses. You're never the same. I'm never the same when you lose loved ones so close to you. You're never the same. So but you have to do it. When I lost someone so very close to me, and I was teaching at a place called Bloody Beaumont in Beaumont, Texas. Bloody Beaumont, a rough stop. They just said it was on the news last month. Multiple closed the whole prison down. The whole United States was closed down. They killing each other at that institution. Anyway, I found out I had the loss. What I did is I went and got a hillbilly buddy of mine. I said, go get me some moonshine. Wine, hooch and moonshine is normal in jail. They make it every day. And I said, go get me some moonshine. And he did, and I put another friend outside my cell. I said, don't let anybody bother me. And I just stood there and mourned and sip some moonshine, and then and every evening I would run for 2 hours so I could sleep. You got to sleep. So I made myself so tired. And the warden was nice enough. He gave me a phone line, not in my cell, but one of the offices just during the day. I had access to all the phone use, which is important, because I had to show strength through with my family, especially with my daughter. So you get through it. If it's either you do or you don't. And just at that time too, when I was going through my morning help, there was a class that I had to graduate of 25 students. That they did an 18-month program. 18-month program was very stringent in prison for an inmate. You have to be in the classroom every day, and we went through this whole 18-month curriculum. So I have to graduate these guys. I had to give them their certificates where they can use twofold. They can use them to get closer to home, or they can go back into court. So it's very important. It's called skills program. So the warden said, you don't have to do it. I said, no, I'll do it. So I went and graduated the class. And never forget, I had sunglasses on because, tears were still coming down now and then. And I graduated the class. So I'm proud of that. These guys did their job 18 months, and I graduated them.
Thank you, George. All right. This is a question on time travel. This is a very unique situation. I remember we went to Center City. We did something one time I was helping you out one day, and you looked up at the skyline, and I thought this was so interesting. You looked at the skyline and said, yeah, this didn't look like this the day before I left. Like, it was like the first time you saw the skyline in that form since 1984, I think you were saying. So how long did it take for you to adapt all of the new technology when you were released? And what was your thoughts on coming out and looking at a new world, which was like basically like time traveling for you, 1984 versus
A lot of the west part of Center City, with Comcast and all that, Four Seasons, that wasn't there. And all those buildings weren't there. What else? All along the waterfront wasn't there.
a lot of changes. Yeah.
Yeah, that wasn't developed. What the heck else?
And you had a cell phone too. You never used a cell phone before.
I didn't have a cell phone in my hand till that day release. They weren't invented. Cell phones weren't invented. Either was DVDs. They all came out while I was in prison. So it was different. I'm still not that great with the phone, but it's very. I was sentenced to life, no parole. I had to live with that. Now I'm sentenced to a cell phone till I die. I mean, I can't wait till I get more financially secure. The first thing I'm going to do is hire an assistant and give her my phone, or give he or she my phone, because I don't want to be bothered with it. They can just relay what's coming in.
Thank you, George. All right, George, why is it important to be nice to people on the way up the ladder? Maybe 30 seconds.
Well, you never want to burn your bridges. So important. It is, and it's easy to we call miserable person. I don't like being miserable. My father wasn't miserable. My father was a thumbs up guy. Us street guys, we have a saying: he's either a thumbs up or a thumbs down. John Gotti was a thumbs up guy. My father was a thumbs up guy. There's other mob guys. I don't put it down. You do them 10 favors, you can't do the 11th. They want to kill you. So that's still, these young guys, you think the street life's intriguing. Guess what? It's not nice. It's not nice. Education is always far better.
Thank you, George. George, I want to quote real quick, Principle 55 from my second book, The Most Important Lessons in Economics and Finance. I'd like to hear your thoughts on that. Unethical behavior may sometimes create large short-term wealth, but always destroys most or all of long-term wealth. And maybe how we can apply this to the Russian-Ukraine crisis.
Yeah, well, again, it's getting back to, I don't want to go big or go back to the Bible. Those stories of greed always repeat themselves. No matter how much technology is involved, greed will always, no matter how you put it together, especially today's world is a paper trail. So greed will always have a bad end. I mean, we have some major people that this is a that Bernie Madoff. I think he just his wife just killed herself 2 weeks ago. That whole family was destroyed, and they dealt in billions. So you know, you have greed. I think greed is a big destructive factor in people's lives, and it's hard to people. Once some people got that in them, and they can't get it out. It's just that greed. So it's I say if you want to take a shot, you young guys or whatever want to take a shot, there's a line. Just don't cross the line. Get close to it as you can. You'll probably make a little more money, but don't cross the line. That's all I can tell you about that.
I love it. All right. Thank you, George. All right. How did it feel to go from being extremely wealthy before prison to being broke when freed? Now, you were let me preface this. You were, as I was saying before, one of the wealthier people in Philadelphia. Even though you were a neighborhood guy, you had more money than most people because of your situation. And then when you left prison, I think you said you had $20 in your pocket. I mean, how did that feel?
Well, when you get out here and when I see the cost of things, whoa, I got a little help. I didn't get too much help. I got a little help, and I went to work, started my life over again, started filming, did a lot of speaking the first 2 years, 2.5 years. I'm getting paid for public speaking, and then I got into open a few stores, and I cut back on my public speaking. So you always can do something. You got to do something. Because I like to dress. I dress nice. They like to socialize. The friends I have are very close to me, and you have to have something. I mean, I'm waiting for the doorbell to bang when a guy's going to hand me a bushel of cash, but since I'm home, it hasn't happened.
Thank you, George. All right, George, one of your favorite quotes I remember you saying is, life has always been about man versus man. Any thoughts on that real quick?
Oh, well, man will always go against man, no matter what. Again, history repeats itself. Man will always go against man. Now, what you have to do is philosophically be a step of that guy. You know what I mean? Or those guys. You got to be a step ahead. And I've always prided myself. That's how I survived in marrying 370 the worst guys you can imagine. I wind up running my cell block. You better know how to think ahead, and you better know how to think fast.
Beautiful. Thank you, George. All right. How I spent 32 years in prison was your TEDx Penn talk speech. It's an incredible video, folks. If you haven't checked it out, it's got over 1 million views. That's George's TEDx talk. George, you want to just summarize that maybe in 20 or 30 seconds?
Yeah, that was a few years back when I first got out. I met some students. I have my university, my pen. So I met some senior students and then some alumni, and we hit it off. And they brought me in to do a TED talk, and which I did. And then it does, I think, way over $1 million now. Anyway, they wanted me to bring me in again. But I didn't go. I don't know what was the time frame when they bringing me in again. I wouldn't go. I said, because I can't top that speech. So I left it alone. But what I'm real proud of was when I was invited to first person ever from my background to speak at the Wharton School of Business. I spoke to a graduating class, and you can see that film. It's out there. It's called Live to Be Remembered, ED, Live to Be Remembered. And you can search that, and I'm very proud of that. No one from my background has ever spoken Wharton. And
when was that, George?
That was after the TED Talk.
Ah, okay.
And this shirt was bought for me by a friend of mine after I did the TED Talk. And I like public speaking, like I said, but I'm thinking about making overtures to the Biden administration so I can maybe get permission to speak with the Bureau of Prison. I think it's time for me to go back into the prisons and start doing the best I can to assist these guys in the mental frame of mind for when they get out.
Yeah, George, I'd be interested maybe co-partnering with you on that one, because I think a lot of those, and correct me if I'm wrong, I think a lot of those prisoners really need financial education, top priority on the way out. As soon
Well,
as
there
they
is
get out.
programs they can go to, but they have to be patient. You're not going to get things right away. You know, they have to be financially set up. For a prisoner to come home to a halfway house, he needs $300-400 just to get his
Yeah,
ID and things like that. They come home with nothing, and then they can't go. They can't leave the halfway house to go find a job unless they have ID, and they need a few dollars to get their ID. So you know,
catch 22.
it could be a vicious circle, but you know, we definitely need programs for these guys coming home. It's all has faded. A lot of it has just faded away under the last administration. It just faded away. Federal reentry just has faded away because I guess they needed money elsewhere. And you know, let's be frank, people don't want to hear about prisoners in America unless you get an isolated case. The injustice was so gross that you know it makes the media. But people don't want to hear. They got the bills coming through the slots. The gas is higher than ever now. So the last person they're going to care about is a prisoner.
Thank you, George. George, how important is being a great speaker if you want to change the world? Speaking of speakers.
Well, speech has always been a powerful tool. I mean, any Roman general that the Senate, back when Rome was ruling the world, when the Senate gave you a legion of 5,000 men, you had to be a great orator. You had to learn how to your troops rallied behind you from how you spoke to them. So you had to actually speak in front of the Senate and prove yourself before they gave you a legion. And Caesar was a great orator. So I think speakers has always been one of the most powerful tools that you can do. I mean, Hitler, I don't agree with him at all, his atrocities, but the guy can get up in front of an audience for 4 hours and keep you there and keep your emotions high for 4 hours. I mean, these great speakers. And I think I think is a great speaker that I listen to is Bill Clinton, former President Bill Clinton. He's a great speaker.
Mm.
But there's different techniques that you learn within yourself and you deliver.
Thank you, George. All right, George, how valuable is freedom to the individual compared to all other assets?
Well, freedom right now to a person that's trying to make his life sense is the most important thing. But now you want to address freedom in the hood. Well, these kids, like I said, they've been in juvie since they're kids. They've been in young adult centers. So they don't think being free is a way of life. They think incarceration or death. A lot of them think they're not going to make it to 2021. So you have different elements with that sentence. I mean, that question. There's totally different elements.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, George. Yeah, we could definitely get in a lot of detail with that, but that's good for now. Thank you. What would you do if you had $100 million right now?
Right now, $100 million.
We're going to give you $100 million. What are you going to do?
Well, I hope my friend just got a contract for 64 million, 65 million. A good buddy of mine for his story and book. So I'm hoping I get something developed like that. I don't know. I really don't know. Maybe just take a bunch of friends and family somewhere, or maybe Italy or Sicily, and get refocused. You know, with that kind of money, you would refocus what your life is going to be tomorrow. So I would just refocus.
Most likely, and I asked you this question a few years back, and I asked you with 10 million. You said help a lot of people. So I'm sure with 100 million, you would probably.
I was never a person that when someone makes it big, especially in entertainment, you got to understand these singers, these rock stars, these movie stars, these entrepreneurs, whatever. They support hundreds of people. Mm-hmm. Hundreds of people are paying their mortgages. Hundreds of people are paying their medical, their kids' education. So never be a hater when somebody's successful. I totally believe in that. So if I become extremely successful, naturally I would create jobs.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, great point. Thank you, George. All right, George, we're going to go into my temple questions, then we'll finish up, figure about 30 seconds each. You want to take a quick minute break or
Yeah.
yeah,
Quick break.
I'll pause just for a minute, okay?
I'll see you back 10 minutes.
This
Okay,
meeting
folks,
is
we're
being
back here. Dr. Anthony Criniti IV here, also known as Dr. Finance. We got George Martorano here, and we're finishing up. So, George, we got some standard questions here that I've asked many of the people on here, the greatest speakers in the world and authors and whatnot. So, and billionaires. Question for you: can one book change the world? Maybe 30 seconds or less.
Oh, yes. One book, there's so many references to that. There's so many, but like again, I keep mentioning the Bible. The Bible has the Quran, the Bible. I mean, they have changed the world. They have destroyed lives, made lives. There's always one book that can make a big change.
Thank you, George. Excellent response. What role has networking played in your life?
Well, in today's world, networking is key. You have to. The world is so moving so fast. There's so much going on. If you don't know how to network, and I'm not that great at it, you better learn.
Thank you, George. As an extension to that question, is mentoring important? And who were some of your mentors?
For me, my age, actually, the mentors could be younger. The younger people, I listen to the younger people. They're basically my mentors. They have ideas that are unbelievable. There's a few old timers left. That few old mob guys that I go see. There's only a handful left, and not even that. And I like to talk about things with them. They're very wise.
But mentoring, would you say it's important?
Absolutely.
Having a mentor?
I do a lot of advocate work. I do a lot of mentoring work. I don't tell people what I do, but I always have young people that I pay attention to.
Thank you, George. Okay, George, what are your favorite financial books? Have you read any business books or any books on money?
Not since I'm home. Not since I'm home. I've been filming and speaking. It's about it. I used to be such a vivid reader and writer, but when I came out, it was like I was in a cage for 32 years and I was thrown into a moving world. And so it was difficult.
Thank you, George. All right. Do we need money to survive?
Absolutely. Has to, and the cost of living is getting higher. The poor can't afford things. So it's one thing to have money, but to be able to use it in the right perspective. Right now, the poor, the middle class can't use it in the right perspective. And it's getting worse.
Thank you, George. And as an extension to that, is finance necessary for everyone? Now I'm talking about finance, the science of finance, learning about managing money.
You have to establish especially guys or he or she coming out of prison. It's very important to establish credit. There's certain steps you can do, but you have to credit. I think credit is everything to an individual.
Thank you, George. How important is having a purpose in business, and what is your current purpose?
Well, our purpose right now with the cannabis industry, we help a lot of people, especially when the thick of things with the pandemic in Philadelphia. We had people that were physically hurting, they were emotionally hurting, and we worked with them through the pandemic. We delivered to people and senior citizens and things like that. So my industry, I think I was ruled essential through the pandemic because a lot of the stores were saying you were non-essential and they were closing them, which hurt a lot of people. A lot of people never came back, but I was actually ruled essential because my store helped a lot of people.
So having a purpose in business is important?
Yeah, you got to have some kind of purpose. I mean, the craziest sounds, even a strip club's got a purpose. A guy goes there, at least he's over there and his mind's being taken care of it. He's not doing something crazy home or on the street. So there's always a purpose.
Thank you, George. What would you like to accomplish in the next 10 years or so, and why?
to be alive. I'm 72, so tell you, if I can keep running, that's all I care about. My health, because if I'm not healthy, I can't help those around me.
That's beautiful. Thank you, George. All right, last question. What would you like to be your legacy to this world?
I just want my stories I would love my stories to live in infamy and earn, so people could have jobs. And 50 years from now, if they do one of my books into a film, there's people be earning from that. You know, that's all. Just for my legacy to help others.
That's a beautiful, beautiful legacy. Thank you, George. All right, we're going to close out now. So, folks, you've been watching the Dr. Finance Live podcast. And again, my name is Dr. Anthony Criniti. We're with George Martorano here. And George has his name up, but it's actually Martorano is his last name. So George Martorano, he's survived a 32-year sentence in prison, just a stand-up guy. And I like to say, you know, first of all, thank you, George, for coming on here. You know, you've actually been in many ways a mentor to me, and I appreciate, you know, I have that other side of me other than money, also the survival side, and you've taught me a lot of things. So I appreciate that. I appreciate you coming on here today. And any last words or anything you'd like to say to close out before we close out the show?
Just everybody keep in thought that the horrific war going on over there, those poor people suffering, those children. I just hate that. I thought those days were over. You know, I really thought those times were over. I'm sad to see that man's faults are repeating. It's just so sad for those. I know some Ukrainian people here in the city, and this is terrible. Any form. Nothing comes from violence. Nothing.
Thank you, George. Appreciate that. All right, folks. Well, again, you've been watching the Dr. Finance Live podcast. Here's the website on the window here, drfinance.info. Here's my 3 books. If you want to read them, The Necessity of Finance is the first one. I wrote that about 10 years ago. And then you got The Most Important Lessons in Economics and Finance and the Survival of the Richest. If you want to get more info, just check out the website. Also, check out social media. George is on there as well. Follow, like, and subscribe. And also, if you want more information on George, okay, his website's in the progress right now. So just go to my website, drfinance.info on the website. Click on the contact page. And if you need anything, whether it's for media or if you want to put that movie deal together, just contact us here on the drfinance.info/contact or the contact form. You'll see it on there on the contact page. Okay. So other than that, thanks again, folks. Appreciate George. Appreciate you being here. Appreciate you guys watching. We'll see you on the next episode. Bye-bye now.
Take care. Bye-bye, Tom. Take care.